see so many individuals interested in our veterans and military-connected families across our nation. And if you are a veteran, would you please kindly stand so we can recognize your service? Great. Well, welcome to the session, Innovative Policies to Serve the Nation's Veterans. My name is Mari Levitt. I represent the beautiful Washington State. Also serve as a member of the National Task Force on Military and Veterans Affairs. If you don't have a member of your state who is on the task force, may I invite you to inquire. We're a great group of folks who really do focus entirely on our military and veterans population. I also co-chair the Joint Committee of Military and Veterans Affairs in Washington State. This session will focus on the fact that military veterans and their families face a variety of challenges as they transition from service to the civilian world. Accessing the many available services available often becomes a daunting task. During this session, we'll learn about efforts to stem the increasing incidence of fraudulent operators preying on unsuspecting veterans and hear about innovative policies relative to veterans' justice and housing enacted by states to better serve our nation's heroes and their families. Our first speaker today, and I got to hear from him yesterday, so very excited for you to hear from him as well, will be Army Colonel Jim Seward. Jim is the Executive Director of the Veterans Justice Commission for the Council on Criminal Justice for the Veterans Justice Commission. That's a redundancy. In 2022, the Council on Criminal Justice announced the launch of a national commission to examine why so many military veterans land in jail and prison and produce recommendations for evidence-based policy changes that enhance safety, health, and justice. The commission is chaired by former U.S. Defense Secretary and U.S. Senator Charles Hagel and includes former Defense Secretary and White House Chief of Staff Leon Panetta, as well as 13 other leaders representing veterans, the military, the Veterans Administration, community advocates, and various sectors of the justice system. Our second speaker is Troy Broussard. Almost.
You're almost there. It's Troy Broussard.
Broussard, yes, thank you. State Director of AARP Kentucky and a proud U.S. Army Desert Storm veteran. AARP has a long history of supporting those who have served in the U.S. Armed Forces. AARP has nearly 6 million members who have served or are currently serving in the U.S. military. In 2018, AARP launched the Veterans and Military Families Initiative to support this critical community's overall health and well-being as they navigate life's transitions. This initiative focuses on outreach, engagement, and programming around the 4 pillars of caregiving, fighting fraud, securing employment, and connecting veterans and their families to the earned services benefits. Troy will share the depth of AARP's engagement to help veterans and military families fight back against criminal scammers who target them. And it's my privilege and pleasure to turn it over to Colonel Jim Seward. Thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon. Are we still awake out there? All right, that's what I like to hear. Mr. Murray from the VFW told me that 5 minutes after I started, they were going to start serving bourbon in the back. And so if you open the doors, I think we'll fill up the rest of the chairs. It's a great honor to be here today. I get to be the director of the Veterans Justice Commission at the Council on Criminal Justice, working with 15 amazing Americans who love our veterans, and a few years ago asked me why we had so many veterans that were going into prison and jails. And I couldn't answer that question. When a 4-star general, retired 4-star general, asks a colonel a question like that, and the colonel has no idea, you have a couple options. You can run for cover, or you can do some research. And I started to do some research. It was amazing to me to look back over the history of the world and see that as warriors came home, since the Iliad and the Odyssey, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the Korean War, and the post 9/11 veterans, there have been some veterans that have found themselves entangled with the very sticky criminal justice system. And if you have never been entangled by the criminal justice system, you might not realize how sticky it is. But I used to be a prosecutor. I've been a defense attorney. I've served as general counsel to a governor where I supervised the Department of Corrections and reformed juvenile and adult laws in our state. And I've seen how once it gets a hold of someone, it can hold on to them for a long time. Who here is a legislator? How many legislators do we have? Thank you. Any legislators from Nebraska? No legislators here from Nebraska. You know why that is? We're talking about innovation today, and this year in Nebraska, they passed innovation in the form of a Veterans Justice Program. We're going to talk about that fairly briefly today, and if you're a legislator who would like to talk about it more, you can get a hold of us, and we're happy to try and either come to your state or come via Zoom and educate folks that are interested in this. The Veterans Justice Commission at the Council on Criminal Justice is really built on this model, where we build a commission, we conduct research and outreach. We've met with hundreds and hundreds of stakeholders across the nation, and most of those stakeholders are organizations. Most of you probably know that in America we have about 60,000, yes, about 60,000 organizations, public and private, that are working to help our veterans. In San Diego County alone, they have a coalition of 160 organizations helping veterans. As we started to do this work, we started to think about the scope of the work and the final bullet, disseminating the findings. Who's going to need to know about this work that we're conducting? We don't just build a report and set it on the shelf. I wish I had a lapel mic because I'm a trial lawyer by training, and it's very hard for me to stand behind a podium and speak to you. But as I was preparing for the interview with Secretary Leon Panetta, I mean, look at his resume: White House budget, White House Chief of Staff, Budget Director, Director of the CIA, Secretary of Defense, Congressman, but he was also an Army captain. And he also got stranded in a snowstorm in Wyoming. And there's a lot of great stories about Leon Panetta, and I got to enjoy them in his 1,000 or 1,200 page book that I read before the interview, because I was a little concerned that he was not going to be very interested in this. And I told this story yesterday to a much smaller audience, and I would just ask you to forgive Secretary Panetta for his colorful language. But when we got done presenting what we wanted him to do, he told me, or asked me, are we going to actually change anything? Are we going to just study this and do a report? He said, if we're not, I think at the time he was either 84 or 86 at the time. He said, if we're not going to kick some ass, I don't want anything to do with this. And I promised him we would, and I promise you we are. And with this model policy, you can do the same in your state. We have many more recommendations on our website that they've made to Congress, to the President, to the VA, to the Department of Defense. Today I'm going to try to spend most of my time focused on the state model policy framework that the commission built with the help of another committee. These are the folks on the commission. For everyone here that knows me, you know I could talk for at least an hour on each one of these folks, but Jim Reed made me promise I would wrap up before breakfast on Wednesday. So I'm going to not focus on all of these folks, but just keep moving. In order to tackle this project that covers the entire United States and the Department of Defense and the Veterans Administration, we had to think about how does the United States manage the men and women that enter the justice system that have served their country. There are over 18,000 police departments in America, 3,000 prosecutors. We are a vast nation built on federalist principles, and each one of those communities and states has built a system of justice that fits its needs. And so we had to think about how we were going to work on that, and we focus on three areas: transition from the military, arrest through sentencing, and corrections and reentry. So the front end of the system, the back end of the system, and the pipeline. Transition from the military. About 250,000 service members each year are leaving the military and entering your communities. Arrest through sentencing. These are the three recommendations, and of course they're spelled out in great detail with reports that are based in research and evidence on our website. I really want to focus on the second one: incentivize and improve veteran diversion from incarceration. That doesn't sound very innovative. In fact, there are folks here today that have been innovating in this space for a long time. You've heard of All Rise, and our friends from All Rise are here today. They have helped America build and operate veterans treatment courts through their subsidiary, I'll call it, because I don't know legally how it's organized, Justice for Vets. And they've trained folks in your states, educated folks in your states about veterans treatment courts. Those veterans treatment courts are really what gave us the inspiration to do this work. And I'm going to attempt to play a 60-second video for you that will tell you why we need to innovate beyond veterans treatment courts. Jim said we were having technology problems, and I am. So I'm going to keep moving, but I'm going to tell you about Hector while this gentleman comes up and saves me. Hector Matacastillo from Minnesota. Imagine he's your neighbor. 12 deployments as an Army Ranger. He comes home, he's been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. He gets in an argument with his wife one evening. About 2 in.the.morning that night, he grabs his 2 revolvers and he goes out in the front yard. He's having a dissociative flashback from his PTS. He thinks he's in Fallujah. Law enforcement SWAT team is there. He's surrounded by 8 officers. Eventually, he's arrested on multiple felonies. Thank goodness nobody gets hurt. The judge hears his story. Look at this. We've got another hero right here. Oh, on his screen it looks like it's going to work. So the judge hears his story and says, Hector, we have to do something different with you.
15-year veteran of the United States Army. I received the Bronze Star during Operation Iraqi Freedom. One of the most difficult things I've ever had to do is transition to civilian life. When I was raised, PTSD was a 4-letter cuss word. We don't deal with it well. I ended up with my 2 revolvers and... Let me restart.
Great.
I'm an 18-year veteran of the United States Army. I received the Bronze Star during Operation Iraqi Freedom. One of the most difficult things I've ever had to do is transition to civilian life. When I was raised, PTSD was a 4-letter cuss word. We don't deal with it well. I ended up with my 2 revolvers in my hands, facing off with 8 police officers. In my mind, I was on an operation. I thought I was gonna die. Then I thought, but why would I wanna live? The judge heard about my military history, looked at me and said, young man, you must exercise your demons. And I'm letting you go to go and get the help that you need. And it worked. I was recruited to become a crisis negotiator. I'm gonna be a clinical psychologist. I've raised 5 boys. If it wasn't for that second chance, I wouldn't have those boys. Maybe we could do something better with veterans that will become a national model. If we do this right with this population, we could do this right with everyone.
Thank you for getting that through. So Hector's an amazing person that has now, or is completing his PhD. He's a crisis negotiator on the SWAT team that arrested him that night. Some of the officers that were there to arrest him that night are now his clients.
22 judges on our court. It's a general jurisdiction court, and I've been on the bench for, 26 years.
All right, if I need to get louder. Hector urged us to consider a national model, and we looked out across the country and we found a nation full of experts. We examined what was going on in the system. We call it a system assessment. We have veterans treatment courts in some states, and they're doing amazing things. But how many of you have, in your state, you have rural parts of your state? Most of you. Every state I have been to in the country has rural aspects to it. 76% of our communities in America are 5,000 people or less. Veterans treatment courts are resource intensive. You have to build a team, and in some of those smaller communities, you might not have a veteran be arrested that year. The team doesn't have anything to work on. The court system's going to say, why do we have this veterans treatment court? What we did, building on the success of veterans treatment courts, is create a different model called the Model Policy Framework. And that framework was used in Nebraska this year and became law. That framework is really about broad eligibility criteria, a standardized veteran sentencing option, and evidence-based case approach. So just like your treatment courts do, it has those most of those same components, but it gives a judge in western Nebraska who doesn't have a veterans treatment court the authority to recognize that service of that veteran who has come before that judge and to say, I'm going to do something different with you. I want to make sure you get the kind of treatment that you need. We've all seen and heard the stories of what can happen when a veteran comes home from war. I know I'm running out of time. We're good? All right. So all of us just finished celebrating the 80th anniversary of Normandy, right? One story that I did not hear in school growing up, or in 3 college degrees, or in military training, was that some of those World War II veterans really struggled when they came home. There's one study out there of 11 prisons in the upper Midwest. The study was released in the early 50s, and it shows that in 1947, 1948, and 1949, if you were standing at the gates of those 11 prisons, 1/3 of the new inmates coming into those prisons were World War II veterans. We've learned a lot since World War II. We've learned a lot since 9/11. The commission is trying to focus on how can we better manage, as a nation, how can we better manage the men and women who have worn the uniform? If an individual comes back to Kentucky and is struggling with post-traumatic stress and they're incarcerated, they're under the current rules, they're not entitled to treatment from the VA while they're incarcerated. That changed in 1999, just before 9/11. Since 9/11, as you know, we've deployed millions of individuals multiple times. The research shows that individuals with multiple deployments, not necessarily combat, but multiple deployments are at a higher risk of post-traumatic stress. If you're at a higher risk of post-traumatic stress, the research shows that you're at a higher risk for justice involvement. Now we have that individual sitting in the county jail, and if they're not entitled to be treated by the federal government that sent them to war, who's going to bear the burden of that? The state and local officials and institutions. This model framework allows the court to put an individual like Hector in a treatment program with the VA while Hector's in the community to get that treatment and accountability and supervision to try to make Hector and those like Hector in your communities a hero once again. And that's really our goal for all those 60,000 organizations that are working in the veteran space across the United States. There's a lot of momentum behind this Veterans Justice framework. All Rise that I mentioned has just endorsed this model policy. They're working across the country. Our staff at the Council on Criminal Justice is working with about a dozen states right now that have said, hey, we think we want that in our state. Will you help us learn about it? Will you educate the folks in our court system or in our budget office or in our corrections and other legislators or in the governor's office? So we're working on that. We're also engaged with champions in about a dozen other states that are trying to build a coalition in their state. Because of the IRS rules, we don't lobby. We're not going to come into your state and tell you, you should pass this. What we do is merely educate on the work of the commission. We're so grateful to all of the folks that are working in the veteran space across America. And I urge you to get a hold of us. We're happy to talk about our other recommendations, but in the interest of time and to make sure that my AARP membership does not get revoked, I want to get off this stage and give my friend John or Troy some time, and we'll take some questions after that. Thank you.
All right. Great job, man.
Thank you, Jim. And Troy is going to kick us off with the next presentation. Troy.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Let's test it out. Okay, great. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here and also being here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. What I would like to ask first before we get started is, how many of you have, is this your first visit to the Commonwealth? Please raise your hand, please. Awesome, awesome. Is everyone enjoying themselves so far here in Louisville, Kentucky? And notice what I said. I said Louisville, Kentucky, all right? That's my thing I want to, as a major takeaway for everyone, make sure it's not Louisville, it's Louisville, it's Louisville, Kentucky, okay? So thank you all for being here today. I'm so excited to be here to talk about something that's extremely important, and that's veterans. I'm a proud Army Desert Storm veteran. So all of my veterans that are out there that were mentioned, I want to thank you all for paving the way to allow me to come here and serve this great country. But I'm here today to talk about something that's going to be extremely important. It's talk about the work that we do here with AARP locally here in Kentucky and across all of our 53 states. That wasn't a mistake. See, someone's like, oh, he said 53. No, with AARP, we have state offices here in 53 states, and what we mean by that, we include DC, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. So there's an office like us with a team of staff that's working very closely to look at issues that are impacting veteran and military families. And I hope today that the statement here today that if you have any questions or if you would like to work with us as it relates to veterans and military families, we'll be more than happy to connect you with that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First thing I want to share with everyone here is that, to talk about our mission that we do have, and we're focused, to support veteran and military families. It started with tax aid first, some tax aid work that we were doing, and then now it served over 1.2 million filers alone in 2023. But the mission is very, very important for us. You know, we launched this mission back in 2017, and it's in each of our states that we do have. And what I want to share with everyone is that here's the full. I'm sorry, hold on, I went too far. My apologies. I want to share with everyone our 4 pillars of focus. And here are the resources that we want to provide free to all veterans. The first one is giving you free military services around caregiving. And we also want to talk about fighting fraud. Fighting fraud is extremely important, and we'll talk more about that. We have some specific data that veterans are being targeted because of them being a veteran. So it's extremely important that you all understand that so that we can really figure out how to help them. We also want to look at if they're doing career changes as well. You know, that's extremely important. We have some free resources for that. And then we want to make sure to connect them to their benefits as well, too. So also want to share with you with AARP, we have approximately 38 million members, but we serve the 50-plus population for over 100. And there's over 6 million members that are veterans or military families. So it's something that's very passionate for us, and we want to make sure that we are helping them. So we created Operation Protect Veterans. And what I would ask each of you to do is to go back to your states and take a look at, get ready, get your cameras ready to take a picture of this data that we have here. And this data is from the Federal Trade Commission. And what we have found is that military fraud, those losses are skyrocketing. You understand that veterans and military families, they have access to things that, for example, pensions and different things that civilians do not have. And I'll share with you what the stories that I've heard is that, you know, us veterans, we all have a similar story. You know, we've all gone to basic training. We've all done advanced individual training, and we served our country. So that's a common bond that we do have. You know, we all went to basic training, so what the scammers will do is they'll really, really focus their efforts on how can I make it relatable. So the first thing that they'll do is they'll say, okay, hey, where did you go to basic training? Once we get that, oh, I went there as well too, that was great. You know, where'd you go for your advanced training? Once you share that, then they say, well, you know what, hey, I'm here with you. I need to verify some information for you now, okay? Let's go ahead, you know, on your DD Form 214, you know, which is your official military record. What I would like for us to do now is let's go ahead and verify your social. The form says, let's start with the last 4 of your social. Okay, great, thank you. Let's get the full one now. And once that is done, the scam starts. And look to the tune of look at those numbers are there. We have to make sure that these crimes, and I'll call them crimes, that we make sure that those crimes are punished accordingly. And it's not fair that someone that went out and served our country are being targeted now. You know, we all could do, you know, do a great job of making sure we protect those who have protected us. So I'll share one thing. Look at the last bullet here for veterans median loss. It's $599 per incident. That's 20% higher than civilians. And what we found is about, you know, the scammers really want to target the veterans and military families. So what we have done, you know, why AARP? Why are we doing this? We launched a collaboration with the United States Postal Inspection Service. And the goal was to raise awareness of these con artists and to ensure that we are protecting our families. The AARP research that we did recently was 80% of veteran military members are targeted, and 40% of them lose money and lose more money as well. So that's an area that we want to figure out how can we work together. So what we created this free Veterans Fraud Center. You can access it online. You can go to it now at www.aarp.org/fraudwatch. And if you do that, it's going to talk to about the top related veteran scams that I'm going to share with each of you shortly. And then it gives you a free online peer group of volunteers that are there to assist as well. What we were able to do is create this really Watchdog Alert Handbook, and this book is free and you can get it online, and it really talks about the top scams that are out there that can really impact veterans and their families. And it gives you a free resource that you can take back with you. You can take these resources back and you can really share it with your veteran, the VSOs and different groups in each of our different states. But I want to take a few minutes and just talk about a few scams that are targeting our veterans. And what we found in some research, and it's at the report here that's on the screen here. What we looked at is the grandparent scam, tech support, imposter scam, and to fix your credit rating was some of the top scams that was out there that's really focused. And what we do is we want to make sure that we share resources. These resources are free. You don't have to be a member to do this. We want to make sure that we are here to support our veterans. And information is key. If you know that this is coming up, you can definitely go ahead and prevent it from happening. You know, we always tell our folks, develop that no script, be prepared. And this goes whether you're a veteran or not. You need to go ahead and develop that no script so when you get that phone call or that email that just doesn't look right, you can be available and ready to say, I'm not going to do it. Just a couple of other scams I want to share with everyone here. Hold on, let me go back. A couple other scams is donating to veterans charity. Please understand, us as a veteran, we want to give back. We've served, now that we have served our country, we are looking for that second mission. And an opportunity to give to a veteran charity is extremely important. So I just want us that we share with them. If it sounds too good to be true, more than likely it is, and we want to stay away from it. And then there are some dealing with free medical equipment, you know, that's really harboring and really going after the veterans that have served our country and now hurt. And these scammers are out there. Fake charities, I mentioned that as well. One last thing I want to mention is that look at the lost money. When you look at lump sum for VA benefits and also updating your military records, those are the two main ones that we see in our research that we have done in working with veterans. So the more that we can do to get the word out, to share it with your constituents or the elected officials that are here in your state, and then also reaching out to us here at AARP to see how we can provide specific data for your particular state on how we can help curb this issue and then potentially create some policies to make sure that we can protect those who have protected us. Just real quick, there was the PACT Act scam that was just recently done. What we found is that veterans say that they've been contacted by someone, and what the PACT Act was going back to the original start of with this particular this benefit. And it was a benefit that was very helpful for veterans and military families. And scammers found that was a new way it was a new opportunity for them, unfortunately. So totally unbelievable, okay? But we're gonna stay ahead of these criminals. And that's right, I said criminals. And and that's what they deserve to be. And it's something that we gotta fix and help out. How they're gonna target our veterans, they're gonna look at ways to request money, verifying that social security number. Please don't do that. They'll have hyperlinks with text to cause issues, and then they'll require payment upfront for VA for exchange for VA health services. That is something that the VA does not do, and we work very closely with the VA to make sure to share that information with our veterans. Couple of quick steps, and then I'll stop and we'll take whatever questions you have. You want to make sure you safeguard your social security number, your DD Form 214, monitor your bills. The same things that we would do, but just that civilians would do, but it's important to share that for veterans as well. Here are just a couple of things that you can also do is robocalls, unwarranted solicitations as well. We just got to be very, very mindful and careful of that. There's a couple of free resources that you can take and share back in your particular states. But I would highly recommend that you take a look at the policies that you currently have and see are those policies stiffer for those criminals to make sure that we can protect our veterans and our families there. Here's a couple of other ways you can keep in touch with us here in Kentucky. However, we are in 53 states. Let's make sure we do that and reach out to us. We have the free resources there to assist. And that's just some other information that we do have that's on our website. But I want to thank everyone for giving me an opportunity. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming here and being here in Louisville, Kentucky. It's a place that I've been here for since September of last year. I'm originally with my last name of Broussard from Louisiana. And I will tell you, the folks that live here in Kentucky, they absolutely love their state. And I will tell you, I'm falling in love with it each and every day as well. So thank you for being here. Thank you for enjoying our wonderful Commonwealth. And we'll be happy to answer whatever questions you do have. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much for, again, your service and for the wealth of expertise and knowledge that you bring to these issues. Do we have questions from the audience? There's a mic set up in the middle, or many of you probably have very loud voices that you could just shout out, not implicating or impugning in any way. Yes, sir.
State Representative Chuck Eisenhart from Iowa. Question for the last speaker, Mr. Broussard. Can I get that right?
Very good. I'm impressed. Okay.
All right.
Absolutely.
I've been to Louisiana.
Fantastic.
What we do for veterans, I find, as a state legislature, often helps other people, non-veterans, because it brings attention to the issue, for one thing.
Right.
What specifically can we as legislators do with the powers we have to legislate to address those things uniquely for veterans?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And you did mention Iowa, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Great state. Absolutely. I would recommend that some of the things that we could do is we have specific data done through our national office in DC that is state specific. There's some state specific information that you can connect with our AARP local Iowa office out there in Des Moines. And we're more than happy to make that connection for you so you can just connect with them and really find out some issues that are going on. What's the data stating for your particular state? So we can provide that information for you. I hope that helps. Or any state, for sure.
Thank you for the question. Are there others with questions? Okay, well, I've got a few. So you're not out early. Nice try. So feel free to do that. On the justice side, we often talk about that our military families serve alongside their service members, and they're part of the mission as important as the service members. Can you talk about, and this question is for Jim, and then Troy, if you want to jump in as well, can you talk about what services there are or what programs are available for military families who are going through the justice system with their member and how they might be supportive? And are there models out there that are specifically focused on our military families or spouses in terms of services and resources that they may have and need given their individual members' challenges?
Absolutely, thank you. As I mentioned in my talk earlier, each of the communities has different nonprofits that focus on different aspects of veteran life, veteran service. Many of those have aspects to them that would be helpful to a family going through the justice system. The model policy framework that the commission developed really focused on the family. Sometimes that family is the victim, focused on that aspect to make sure they had a role and a voice in that court proceeding, so that whether victim or not, that family could be engaged in that process. That's probably the thing that comes to the top of my mind first. I don't know if Troy has anything he wants to add to that one. I know I won't try to guess what all 600 veterans treatment courts do, but I know they.
I just want to echo what Jim mentioned. I think it's important that that we provide that avenue. I mean, I'm going to look closer myself to see if we could do some additional work with you all as well, getting the resources to share, because again, veterans are put in a situation sometimes that is very unique than in the civilian life, And, when you're taking that oath, and then we're out there really focusing our attention to protect and serve, it can create different issues, so the more that we can understand them better, I think that's going to be key, so that we can relate, so that we can help them overcome their issues, whatever issues that may come from that. So appreciate what you and your team's doing, Jim. Thank you.
Great. Any questions? So the next question really focuses on data as legislators. Is there one?
Question,
Somebody,
yes.
Yes, ma'am, with the
Lovely
cool
hat.
hat.
Lovely hat.
You have a good hat head.
Thank you. Got to get in that
Yes.
Kentucky Derby mode. Representative Lola Sheldon Galloway from Montana. I work with a group that works with Green Star families, and I was just curious what your organizations do for Green Star families. And do you not know that
Ma'am,
term?
Are you saying grief start?
Green Star families.
Green Star families.
So our veterans that have returned home and have committed suicide, and the families are just kind of left, everything's just dropped. So is there something that your organizations are doing to help with those families?
So you said Green Star families, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
Wow, I guess I know of Gold Star families, but Green Star, we have not done any local work with them. However, I would love to connect with you after this session here to talk more about it, please.
Yes, thank you.
Green Star, thank you. Okay.
Thank you for the question. And the question for those who couldn't hear, what resources or what do you know or what's being done to serve our Green Star families and to go through their grief? Yes, sir.
Hi, Senator Ben Brooks from Maryland, Vietnam veteran. Question, is there anything that can be done to help or assist veterans whose disability has been downgraded? Now, they can go to some lawyers or some other companies that are out there to assist in that matter. But what I'm told, just using quick math, if you've been downgraded to maybe $1,000 a month, 40%, and then if they can get that up to $2,000, and what they'll do, they'll charge you 5 times that increase.
Sure.
And I just think it's really, really unconscionable, and I think they're taking advantage of the vets when they do that. So my question is there a different track, different method they use to up that disability percentage? Or is there something that AARP can do, or,
Sure.
just to help these vets out? Because I think that's truly taking advantage of vets.
No, you're absolutely correct. We see instances where they'll go to different groups or either, not to speak bad about attorneys, but to an attorney or something along those lines, where the number one thing that could have been done is just go right to the VA. And if you go to the VA, there's what we call veteran service officers that you can go there, or you can also do them through your local VSOs, through VFW, I believe, does that as well to assist. Because the goal, if you go through one of those approved, the VA they have approved vendors that can really help, and their own staff that can help with that particular to make sure your percentage is up. And for those of you that don't understand the percentage, if you get hurt while in the military and you can prove that, what happens is you'll get a percentage of pay that you can use throughout the remainder of your life. And that's extremely important to help with veterans, so that we can keep them surviving and doing things because they served our country, got hurt. We must take care of them, and it can keep them out of trouble. So I would say the VA and the veteran service officers, those are the best groups to go to start this process. And stay away from these other, lawyers
Right.
trying to get 10% to get to 20%, and then you end up paying $10,000 to get a minimal increase. And in some cases, it's lower than that.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Now, since I've got the mic, I'm going to take a little privilege. Do we have any other Vietnam vets here? Oh, well.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I just want to say, welcome home, brothers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, and again, thank you to all our service members. Last question. As legislators, we love data. and we like to know what's happening in our states. How might we learn whether it's the number of number of veterans who are involved in the justice system in our particular state, and how does that compare to other states? Or how might we learn about fraudulent claims or fraudulent issues that are impacting our veterans and by state, and how we might compare to other states? And so where might we go if we wanted to solicit and get data in order to do our work?
Thank you. You can start with your Department of Corrections if you're a legislator and you're curious to find out how many veterans might be incarcerated in your state. There is a chance that your state is using the VA's database called VRSS. That's the acronym VRSS. That database has every military member that served in the last 70 or 80 years in that database. It, according to the VA and according to DOD, it also includes the veterans that were discharged with other than honorable or bad paper. So if your Department of Corrections is using that database, they should be able to get you accurate data. Where you might not be able to get accurate data without a lot of digging is in your county jails. There's not a good tracking mechanism. There's not a lot of reporting going on. That's one of the things the commission is working on. And then how about probation or parole? That data is lacking in most states. We're working with many states across the country to try to get that data put together so that we can share that with the country and make sure folks know, because it's not just about keeping people out of prison, right? It's about how we manage the men and women who have worn the uniform. And if we think about somebody like Hector, if Hector can have an amazing job in his community and be a productive citizen and be raising his 5 boys rather than sitting in prison serving time for that crime, it certainly, at least for Hector and his family and that community, makes a big difference. And so that's really our focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. That was well said. Yeah. I got to follow that now? Oh, my goodness. No, man.
You can take your question.
All right, great. What I'll say is what we would recommend that individuals do is, for you looking for it, go to your local Department of Veteran Affairs. We always recommend go there first, okay? And then after that, what I would recommend is that you can connect with AARP and we can look for some state-specific data as well. But I would go there first to find out if there's, how many crimes are being done, or what's the statistics around that, and monies that's being lost. We use the Federal Trade Commission that we work very closely with. So that would be some areas where we get a large source of our data points from. But I would say initially, the VA, go to your local VA Veteran Affairs. They'll be able to pull some information and then connect with your local AARP office in your particular state. That's a great way to start. And then we'll work with the FTC to find out more specific information. So I'll stop there.
Thank you both. Colonel Seward, go ahead.
Thank you. Troy, while you were giving that excellent answer, I Googled Green Star families because I've not heard that term, but I certainly have been working in the space of veterans who have lost their life to suicide, and it's my understanding that that's what you were referring to. I can tell you that the commission has been focused on that for 3 years at least, and there are hundreds of organizations across the country, of course, working on that complicated issue. I will tell you that one of our focuses at the commission is trying to figure out through the research, working with Duke University and America's Warrior Partnership, whether or not veterans who are taking their life are involved in the justice system at the time or recently. You can imagine if you're a proud Marine, man or woman, comes home from war, maybe you're struggling with post-traumatic stress and you decide that your coping mechanism is bourbon. I shouldn't pick on bourbon in Louisville, right? Your coping mechanism is white wine. So you drink white wine by the bottle, and you're always looking for the answer at the bottom of your bottle of white wine. This is a tongue twister. Obviously, you'll never find it, but you might find those red and blue lights behind your car, and you're arrested, and your grandmother was a Marine, and your mother was a Marine, and now you're sitting in jail, and maybe you lost your job. You know, that justice involvement, that shame, when you've worn the uniform and you came home a hero, the early research that's going on indicates that there's a correlation to justice involvement. And so I'll tell you, ma'am, we've been very focused on that, and I apologize. I just hadn't heard Green Star, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Well, please help me to show expressed appreciation for Colonel Seward and for Troy Broussard. I still don't have it.
Thank you all.
I'd like to.
Troy, nice job.
Before you both go. We want to thank them for their service. Clearly, they have a vast array of expertise and knowledge that we would love to spend hours with as legislators of how we can help our veterans and service members in our state. So again, use their resources. Their contact information and their bios are in the NCSL app, so you can learn more. But it's my distinct pleasure, and we were able, the NCSL a couple of years ago on the Military and Veterans Task Force developed a coin. And it's really a distinct honor, and so we're super excited. Thank you, Jim and team, for putting this together. Colonel Seward received his coin yesterday at our task force meeting, so I would like to present this coin to Troy Broussard. One of these days, I'll get it.
Troy Broussard, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Troy.
And with that, thank you for serving your military veterans and their families, and we are adjourned. Thank you.